just going to jump right in because I'm in New York, but I have to fly to the Dominican Republic tonight for the homie's wedding. Not tonight, in the morning, but early enough that I got to get my shit together. And, you know, I just can't miss the flight. You know, it's just that feeling before you get to a place where you're like, I hope I get to the place I'm trying to get. And so I'm just trying to be as responsible as possible because I'm in the wedding. So it's like, I really, really got to be at the wedding. There's no, oh, I'm sorry, I wasted you money. It's like, you're supposed to sing and shit. So that all being said, let us pull the monthly read. And we'll do the key card, then we'll get into the indies, and we should talk this out pretty soon. Let's see if any other decks are needed. All right, so for our monthly read, it's just Visions in the Liminal Space. The only decks that traveled with me, the only decks that traveled with me in this case, and I will probably bring one or two down to DR, but like maybe one even. But the ones that came are Visions from the Liminal Space, which is the only Oracle deck. And then I have Manzel Bowman's Tarot, Deska Onyx Tarot, and the Numinous Tarot. So a gender nonconforming deck, Black Femme deck, and Black Masculine deck. And then an Oracle deck. So let's see here. All right, even the key card is from this deck, so it's just straight messages from Visions in the Liminal Space. Also, I just have to do a special shout out to the new homie Stephanie around the corner, who just got my manicure together. Look at that, she did such a good job. And I'm so happy because you never know. When you're out of town, you're doing something else with someone else. Okay, well, starting Leo season and the concern card with the Hell Train. 666. Now, this is an interesting card in this deck, and I don't read the book too much to get to know what the deck is trying to say at the outset. But for me with this card, I think if people imagined that this would be some sort of boomerang, you know, like 2019, 2020, you know, 2021, 2022, and that we would be in some sort of upward swing, but not only just because of monkeypox, but just because the way that things are being expressed, I should say, the way that people are getting shit off their chest or trying to get things across are generally these days from our more basic negative instincts, right? So hell, heaven, these are constructs. These are our ideas of a place that is positive and a place that is negative, ultimately. And so when we have a hell train, it's like the track that we're on is a negative track, right? But also we're going into the cold seasons, and we're going into, in the United States, a year right before an election year for president. So 2023 is going to be more of all the things, and maybe, and you know, whatever, all time exists at once, all dimensions exist at once. So you might end up in whatever dimension of Earth that is most necessary to you, and I might end up in a different. But why I say this is, I'm almost like, oh my God, is there going to be another quarantine because of monkeypox? And because they're marketing it as a sexually transmitted infection, I think, but it's not. It's a respiratory infection. So if we go into in 2023 another quarantine, right, and how stir crazy people become as a result of that. So we're basically just getting on this train now is what I'm trying to communicate. Just August is this train, and we are starting another adventurous ride of humanity. But, you know, I haven't turned over the other cards, so they may negate me. I mean, we'll see. But I mean, they're not going to tell us this far into the distance anyway. But my sense is that when we come out of these things, when we really get this shit we fully go in, get everything on the table, everything becomes very clear to and obvious as it has been, but also to the point that people aren't even spinning narratives anymore. Once we get through that period, that 2023, that 2024, coming into 2025, that's when shit is really gonna get sweeter. But for a while here, we're gonna be on this little journey. You know, just expressing some of the worst qualities, witnessing some of the worst qualities, being put in circumstances that are not favorable, right? Because it's like, that's why people don't think two terrible choices is a choice. And it's like, it is a choice along a spectrum of choices. But it's true that when you live in a negative world, you have to select from mostly negative choices, just socially, conditionally speaking, and circumstantially speaking, because those are the kinds of circumstances that we invest in. And I can say that being in New York. I haven't been in New York since 2019. It looks like LA, but I say that because LA is very dirty. And we've always had a lot of unhoused people because, of course, if you're going to be unhoused, you might as well not freeze to death. And so Giuliani used to give free tickets to LA, and a lot of unhoused people would end up there. But like now in New York, it's dirty and there are unhoused people everywhere. And the conditions, just the number of New Yorkers that I know are actually like the things they have to do to live here, to survive in the only place that they've known. This lack of appreciation for the circumstances of others. This is also part of this hell train. And also the concern, you know, we're all preoccupied with our own hellscape, and yet they're all connected. So we're really going to really understand through this experience how alike we all are as a species. Now we'll go to the opportunity obstacle card. How are we using the concern? Are we using it to progress or to stagnate? And we have, you may never know, which is interesting, right? It's like a Houdini cage. And, you know, and what's kind of interesting about this, I've never pulled this card before, number one, for anyone or for any reason. Number two, we do know that Houdini died doing his own tricks and challenging himself and pushing himself to the limit, right? Through a little bit of a fluke, allegedly died. There are conspiracy theories that he didn't die, but that's the rumor. And then also that you actually won't know what circumstances you can get yourself out of until you're actually along the journey of attempting that for yourself. And knowing that there's not one way to do it. So the way to know how it can be done is to do it as many ways as you can conceive of to do, as many ways as existence allows for, right? Like when you take action, that existence hits that with positive synchronicity through alignment, magnification, extension, you know? Or if it hits you with a negative synchronicity, which would obviously be like decay, denial, blockade, destruction, repulsion, right? But what you may never know, it's like, one, what are you willing to risk for what you believe in and what you wish to understand about yourself? Because obviously anything that we choose to do with our life, whether we are actively thinking about what it means about us or what it reflects about us, it is a reflection of us. So our work, our choice of work, our choice of where we live, our decisions around those things are what our life is made out of. So it's what we're made out of. That's what I'm trying to say. So why that matters is because you'll only know how big of a risk it is by taking it. And it's true that there are people who have been made examples and who are sort of like archetypes for taking risks. And because we are in a negatively polarized world, that we often depict that in negative ways and provide negative outcomes for such things. Because I was just thinking of I don't know if I could call it a meme, but like an image I saw that was like Romeo and Juliet is not a love story. It's a story about a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old who hooked up for 3 days and then 5 people died, including themselves. And I was like, yeah, you know, like all these archetypal stories, even, and obviously, of course, with like cis heteropatriarchy, all these archetypal representations are tragedies. So, you know, when we see You May Never Know, there can be an inclination to assume the worst, because that is what we are conditioned to do. But the only way that changes is that if each person is willing to assume nothing, right? Neutral, assume the best, meaning even if this shit doesn't go the way that I prefer, it is happening for my highest good, and therefore there is something I can get out of it, or even if it's getting away from that motherfucking shit. So like all of that, what was I just talking about? Oh, right. Assuming nothing or assuming the best then creates outcomes that have a greater percentage chance of being possible, of being experienced. And why I say that too is because even if no other motherfucker did it, how would you have the experience of it if you didn't do it yourself? Because this is the ultimate like trap that we have, especially in our individualistic centered culture in the US of America. Like, there's all this emphasis on what the people will do or what will be done in response to what has been done. But there is very little emphasis of getting on with your life, not in a capitalistic way, but in a healthy way, where it's like I took a risk, something happened, I learned about myself, I took a beat, I went on with my life, right? That's not how we frame experience. That's not how we frame risk. Instead, we frame it as something that is foolhardy, that is usually a vice driven, right? Like greed, lust, pride, whatever, 7 deadly sins. And so when you see You May Never Know, this is also why we, in our culture, other than obviously anti-Blackness, frame the unknown and darkness as negative, because there's this assumption that it encapsulates everything that we don't prefer, but it also holds everything that we do prefer, because some shit is all the shit we know is some shit we once didn't know, including the things that we like. So You May Never Know also could be referring to all the buried treasure that you could be having in your life that you're never going to know because you're not taking the risks that would tell you, that would explain themselves. Because the thing itself is the reward of the thing. The belief is the reward for the belief, right? Reading the cards is the reward for reading the cards. Love is the reward for loving. If you don't get lost and enjoy the experience itself, then it's probably not something that is about you or that you truly enjoy. Even if you can't find a way to be like neutral, right? Because getting lost in it doesn't mean, and I was flying high and everything felt, it also is just like, I'm not fucking irritated. I am where I am and I accept these circumstances. So risk taking, and we are in Leo season, okay? And then hitting into Virgo season. but like risk-taking, changing the orientation of the train so it's not all negatively polarized risk-taking, right? Reactionary, but also with trepidation, you know, with a little like a toe in, tiptoeing, walking on eggshells and the shit. You know, not doing it with our whole chest, And then our advantage aversion card is broke is the beginning. I really like this card because it's a piggy bank that's broken open. And other than saving, the other purpose of the piggy bank is to empty that motherfucker. So broke is the beginning is like, you broke this piggy bank open because you put this shit aside for a purpose. You can't take it with you. So like all this life that you may be talking yourself out of or negotiating yourself out of or assuming yourself out of, instead of imagining yourself to, through, and allowing existence to then affirm through positive synchronicity, allow through neutral synchronicity, or deny through negative synchronicity, right? Like you do not need to project your negative assumptions. But broke is the beginning in the sense that like it's the beginning of the change you intended for. No pun intended, because obviously you can put paper bills in the piggy bank, okay? And even, you know, credit cards and shit and Bitcoins or whatever. But like that it's okay to be in your purpose and that it's not always important to be at the completion process, that it's okay to be in the doing of. And something I've really been working on internally, because telling on myself, a bitch has a lot of things to do, but something I've been working on myself internally about is, and I might have even written it in my phone, but like that the doing of is as good as the doing done, right? So it's like you think about your laundry being clean. You think about the clean kitchen and you want that. So the doing of that is as good as that being done, because it's the doing of that gets it done, right? So, but trying to find the same vibratory place in my head and in my body to feel as if the doing of it is the same as the seeing it done, because that is the result, right? So just putting myself in the state of the end while I'm in the doing, right? And allowing it to be done basically with as little resistance as possible, so that I have the outcome that I prefer as easily as possible, right? So it's also this kind of interesting drag, actually, in my opinion, from Visions in Liminal Space, okay? Because it's literally, these three cards are literally like, first of all, Hell Train, the concern card. Opportunity, obstacle, are we using the concern as a blockade or as elevation stone? And then the advantage aversion, what about our character as helping or hindering us in the situation? And then for it to be about like, it would just be easier to not resist. So the drag here is, it's literally like all the ancestors, spirits, earth itself, saying it's literally just easier to be your fucking self than to do this trash ass pretend life shit that y'all are doing. If you're not happy, it doesn't pay. And for those who it pays, some way or the other, let me put it this way. And I know I'm going to paint it like a binary, and it's not a binary, but one way or the other, either they're doing what they love, and that is how they have accumulated the things, or they accumulate the things, but they also live a highly unsatisfied life. So for them, it's the directive is no different. It's like, you need to be authentic to yourself, or the money is fucking meaningless, or the time is fucking meaningless. And by meaningless, it just means it's full of things that aren't that meaningful to you. It's not that the shit has no meaning. It's just that for you, it feels kind of irrelevant. And so then your experience starts to feel kind of irrelevant. So the drag here is like, I mean, y'all can go to hell and back, And, you know, knowing would be knowing by doing, like if you need to take it there, but it would just be easier to like break the cycle and change and be yourselves and know that that is what's supposed to happen, right? And then there's all that projection about if you will be received that way. And the point, and that creates inertia, because the point is, for you, you won't have the experience if you don't do it. So even if another motherfucker doesn't do it, the point is that you do it so that you have the experience. If no one else does it, that's their business, because that's their experience and that's what they're going to have to deal with at the end of their journey, right? Because broke is the beginning. So if they get to the end and they haven't broken with the cycles and with playing the game that you don't even enjoy, that also causes you a lot of suffering, then that's their, I was going to say it's their problem, but I'm going to say that's their prerogative. The point is whether you trust that that is your birthright, whether you are entitled to be yourself, and whether you are entitled to have a life that where being yourself isn't a fucking tragedy. And, you know, that everything bad that's possible happens because you chose to be true, you know? I mean, like, fuck, that is a tragedy. So hopefully you can write at least a neutral story where it's like, and then I sailed off into the distance, or a positive one, which is, and motherfuckers learned to get with the times and they were good. And then I was good, which is also a good story. Now our key card, also from Visions in Liminal Space, whether it's the skeleton key, right? The thing that unlocks any door, or the keystone, the thing that's holding the shit together, the bridge together. We have